everyone, welcome to the Boopcast, episode 36. We are your hosts, SheNoob and...
Cory.
And this is a weird setup. We're
so far away. Is that the right side? Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Damn it. This way, that way.
I'm getting it right now and you're getting it wrong. I love it. So, as many of you may be aware, they changed the schedule on us. Cheers, Rooster Teeth.
Thanks, Rooster.
Just when we think we've got it all figured out, they're like, oh, psych, 13 chapters. And we're like, well, fuck. Now the break week's moving forward a week for more than we thought it was going to be. So the break week's actually next week, not the week after. So our guests for chapter 9, we've had to move them around. We tried to get them this week. They can be on this week. So hopefully they'll be the week after. And next week we wanted...
This is just a really horrible week for everyone.
Yeah. And we wanted next week to be just the two of us because we're going to discuss chapter 14 of last volume. So we tried to get a last minute person on this week, but just didn't happen. So here you go. It's just us today. And my camera
2 weeks
is
to just us.
Super zoomed out. Let me fix that for a second.
I was gonna comment on that.
Hang on. There we go. That's better. Now you can see me. Super far out. Anyway, so we're going to discuss chapter... Hey, Bartek, we're going to discuss chapter 8 of RWBY Volume 6 today. I haven't prepared whatsoever, but that's fine. Cory's more organised than me, so take it away.
Okay, so, well, we'll start like we usually do with the rewind and the RWBY. And the RWBY was them talking about the building of Argus. And, I don't know, it basically just confirms everything everybody knows, is that, like, they inspired it off of San Francisco, and it's like this amalgamation of mantle architecture with Mistral architecture, so it's kind of San Francisco meets Greco-Roman, and that was basically their inspiration for Argus, and then went through all the stuff related to that, and I don't know, it was interesting.
I'm going to unceremoniously eat a banana, by the way.
Oh no.
Don't judge me. And don't gift this.
I was going to say, you have to do it really unsexily.
Not on the podcast, I don't. That's another stream thing.
True.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to go back and watch that RWBY later, because I love the design of Argus. And, yeah, the inspiration from San Francisco and all of that. I've never been to San Francisco, obviously. But, yeah, I really love the design of Argus, and I loved the amount of detail that they put into it, and the amount of effort they put into making it feel unique and making it feel different from every other city that we've seen so far. And the fact that it's still in Mistral, in Anima, but is a very vastly different city to Mistral. Like, Mistral has very Asian architecture, and it feels very Eastern inspired, but Argus feels like an old English town. It's really weird. So yeah, I liked that about it.
They also just talked about how, like, big an undertaking it was, and it's like the biggest city they've ever built. And they also said that like most of the buildings were done by one guy. They didn't say who that was, but I was just like, wow.
You're an hour later. Has your time zone checked? No, we're just an hour later because I didn't want to get up early if we weren't having a guest. So
yeah, Beck had a charity stream last night that she needed to do.
I had a charity stream last night, which started late, and then I was like, I'm not getting up at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's just not happening. So I decided to push it back an hour, and then I also have a 12-hour stream in a few hours, so that's fun.
Yeah.
So it's all
busy.
Today. Busy me. Yeah.
So then the RWBY Rewind, the first thing about it is that Chad was in the Nora workout gear for this episode, and you just see a little bit too much of Chad.
Oh, was he?
Yep.
Ew.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of him, and like he's even like he's sitting like he has a skirt on, but it's really it's workout pants. They're just way up on him, and it's just like too much Chad. There's too much Chad.
Oh, that's
But,
uncomfortable.
Yeah. I actually watched most of this RWBY Rewind live. I will say the experience I had in the chat room, not great.
No.
But there was one troll in there who was kind of ruining the experience for everybody. But other than that, the episode was great. They had Miles on as a guest.
Yeah,
and
I need to watch this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, also the other thing before that is their like big poll that they had during the episode was they were asking if people suspected that the general behind Argus's base was Winter or not, and it was 75% of people said yes and 25% said no, and I'm just like people. No.
But actually, to be honest, when I was watching Chapter 8 and those Tweedledum and Tweedledee morons out the front were like, we will go and fetch our commander, let's go fetch her. For half a second I was like, Winter? But you can see the excitement in my face, my reaction, and then I'm like, I think about it and I'm like, no, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, in my reaction I literally go, there's no way it's Winter.
I was like,
it?
Wait. But yeah, no, once I thought about it I was like, nah, that doesn't make sense.
But the other thing that confused me about that is like my argument for why she wouldn't be in charge of the base was that she's only a special operative, but
so is Winter.
Like, well, no, Winter is a special operative, but then right. Is Caroline Cordovan. Yeah. They introduced her special operative, Caroline Cordovan. So I was like, okay, well that kind of throws away my theory that like.
The question
it wasn't
is,
because
like,
of rank.
What is a special operative? It's such a, like, undefined rank. It's like, oh, special operative. The fuck does that mean? Like, what are you? I don't understand. Are you a lieutenant? Are you a commander? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was one thing in the episode that they talked about that I was like, everybody was under the impression it was Winter, and I'm like, we're gonna see Winter this volume, but she's not in charge of the base. I never thought she'll show up later in the volume, and she'll probably like knock some sense into Cordovan or whatever, but
no offense to all the special operatives in the Noob Army, by the way. Yeah. I just realized there's one in the chat.
Yeah. But another thing that Miles confirmed in this episode is the names of Maria's weapons, and they are life and death.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. And so that's interesting, and like he talked about like the reason behind it is that, you know, she is the Grim Reaper, but she's also a silver-eyed warrior, so like she's about protecting life and destroying death, kind of, and you know, so, like she's got the balance.
So she's only got one now. So does she only have death because she's getting old and she's going to die soon?
Maybe.
I don't know. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then he was also asked who his favorite character to write this volume was and who his least favorite was. And he says his favorites to write this volume were RWBY and Maria, because they're just, you know, interesting this volume. And then he said normally Crow's his favorite. I just noticed on the stream you can see Skype in the top right-hand corner of my screen.
Oh, yeah, let me fix that real quick.
I just noticed you can see it right there.
Hang on. Let's hide that. There we go. Now you're super zoomed in.
But he said that normally Crow is his favorite to write for, but this volume he's actually disliked writing for Crow because he's making bad choices.
Oh, thank you for the host. Yeah. Crow's pain in the ass this volume. I think we've all been feeling that.
And then
I empathize with Miles, actually. You know, when you like write a character and you love the character and it's your character and they're your baby and you love them, but they're just being so annoying. But you're writing it, but it's like the character's doing it and you're getting so annoyed at your own character. That happens to me a lot.
Yeah, it's like you're my.
Like, what are you doing? Stop being stupid.
Mm-hmm. But another thing, and I'm sure you probably saw stuff about this on Twitter because I saw it a bunch. But they asked Miles the question, how much does fan opinion influence the writing? And then went on to say like who lives longer, relationships, etc. So, clearly, like, the question was asking, like, will people sway you in favor of a certain ship or anything? And I wrote down Miles' exact response because it was good. And he says, fan opinion is considered, but we always want to stay true to the story we want to tell. If you spend all your time chasing an audience, you'll never, ever catch it. A lot of the shows we write are founded on the idea of make the things you want to watch. And he then went on to name an example of an example of when fan opinion has affected the show, and he talked about Sienna Khan. That they, Sienna Khan was kind of like a one-off character that they made her look really cool because she was the high leader of the White Fang, so she needed to look cool. But then people like really liked her, and so they were like, "Shit, put her in the Adam character short."
Yeah, well, I think we all noticed the fact that they like tossed her in the Adam character short because we were all pissed off they killed her so quickly. But like, what did they expect to happen? Honestly, I'm like, they showed us this really cool character, and she was literally in the show for 3 minutes, and then she was dead. And we're like, well, that was a waste. Like, she could have been so much more than what she was.
But yeah, and then he also went on to say though that grand scheme they try to stick to their guns. So, but I can think of other instances in the show where they've talked about like fan opinion affecting things. Like Torchwick was only supposed to really be involved Volume 1. And then they extended it out through the entire Beacon arc. Velvet was kind of a one-off character that got a whole team and stuff now. Neo. Neo's entire existence is fan service.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
and we're not complaining.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like there are times where they do stuff, but it's also why like a lot of people when they talk about Neo are like Neo isn't really going to have like a big impact on the show, because like a lot of people talk about how like Emerald probably fairly easily could have filled Neo's shoes this volume if they wanted to, but they just put Neo there instead.
I mean,
so like
she could have, but at the same time, it's like how would she get from where she is to that point? Because of where Emerald is, she sort of couldn't be where Neo is. Not at this point in the story, anyway. But
I mean, they could have found a way to explain it, like she ran off or something. But
well, yeah. I mean, it would have been a little bit of a cop out, though. I think if they had just replaced Neo with Emerald. I do still see a redemption for Emerald in the near future. She doesn't seem that keen on Salem and all of her plans, and she seems terrified and scared people do stupid things. So, Bartek
and
says
Cinder's the only thing keeping her there.
They should have named Marie's weapons Vita and Mutt. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, but
yeah,
might be a little
somebody
on the nose, but yeah.
Yeah, somebody on the person who asked the question about the name of Maria's weapons asked if it was named like Dia Muerta or something like that. Like they had a name that was, like I think actually the name that they gave it was like Grim Reaper or something. I don't know, but they had a name that was very similar to that they threw out, and Miles was like, "Nope, it's just Life and Death."
Okay. Not even gonna try and be fancy with it. Alright, sure. Cool, yeah.
And then somebody asked if Silver-Eyed Warriors have a name outside of being called Silver-Eyed Warriors, and Miles' response was no. And so they asked him to make one up on the spot, and so he said Sparkly Dazzlers.
Of course he did. Of course he did. It's Miles. Oh my god.
And they are Vale's greatest roller derby team.
Right.
So, and then they moved into the lightning round, and somebody asked the question, in a multiverse situation, what's an event you would like to see how things would change? And he said he'd want to see how different things would be if Blake had stayed with the White Fang. And I'm like, that actually, like, of all the characters, I think has, like, the most potential there. Because, like, I mean, with Weiss, you could just like send her to Atlas Academy instead and see how that played out. And
but then we wouldn't have Team RWBY. What would
yeah,
the
exactly.
show even be?
Exactly. But yeah, and then somebody asked about Mercury's semblance, and he said, yes, Mercury has a semblance, and you will have to wait to find out.
You'd have to change the show to Juniper and just have them be the focus. That might be cool, actually.
That would be.
To be fair, Team Juniper a way cooler team than Team RWBY. Right from the get-go.
Okay, right from the get-go, maybe. Mm. They had Pura.
Exactly. That's like 90% of the reason why they're a cooler team. Mm-hmm. But they did have Jean, so that was kind of their Achilles heel there. But, sorry, no pun intended.
Ooh, owie.
That's an ouch. Move on quickly. Change the subject. Oh, shit.
I can hear everyone crying already.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Oh shit.
But that's basically everything I took notes on in the rewind. I will say it was a very interesting, as far as rewinds go, it was very interesting. Oh, also, they're taking a 2-week break. That was the other thing they said. So they will not be doing one, I think, for episode 9.
Yeah.
And they'll, like, lump 9 and 10 together.
That episode's going to be, like, 40 minutes long.
Yeah, probably.
Jesus.
But yeah. So, I don't know. If you haven't watched it, I think they release those on YouTube when the next episode goes live.
Yeah, I think the rewinds do go on YouTube, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it'll be up on YouTube then by the time this is out. So if you haven't watched it, watch it because it's good.
Yeah,
I liked it.
I'm always apprehensive going into watching a rewind because I just feel like they're just so awkward half the time that I'm like sitting here cringing in my seat trying desperately to take notes on anything they're saying, but most of the time I end up just taking notes on why they're all being stupid.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this last week, is like you and I were both really frustrated with last week's rewind because they were just like, ooh, why are you making dumb assumptions? Like, Talk is a lizard faunus related to Ilya.
What even?
Yeah.
Just because they're both reptiles, guys, does not make them related.
Racist.
Racist, yeah. Definitely racist.
Speaking of racist, this episode.
Oh, yeah. There was racism in here. My goodness. There was a little bit of everything in this episode, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So, I found the entire first section of this episode not only a little bit too long, but just really bizarre. I was like, what is happening the whole time I was watching it? The two dudes at the Atlas base, I was like, okay, this is kind of funny, but at the same time, it's getting really old really quickly. And I'm just getting really annoyed with them.
Mm-hmm. Like, my initial thought when I saw them was like, we've already had Dumb and Dumber this volume. Like, who are these idiots?
It's Tweedledum Tweedledee again. And I'm like, they're even more annoying. Somehow. I do get that, like, Caroline Cordovan is like the Queen of Hearts, and they're the two morons that are always standing behind the Queen of Hearts.
Yeah, they're the card soldiers.
I don't know. It's been a very long time since I've seen Alice in Wonderland, but yeah, I did get that, but at the same time, I didn't get it. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is unbearable.
Well, people also think that Cordovan might also be the old lady who lived in a shoe because of Nora's comment at the end of the scene.
Yeah.
About your base looks like a big dumb boot.
Way to show him, Nora. Yeah. So a bit of Queen of Hearts and a bit of old woman in the shoe, and you know, just chucking in them fairy tales and parables everywhere they possibly can. Fables, not parables. Either or. I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's move on. Yeah, so I remember saying last week about how when we saw that final shot of the gate like closing on them, and I was like, I wonder if we're going to get to see the meeting with Atlas or not. We actually did. I was kind of pleasantly surprised. I was like, I was right about something. Again, this is strange. 2 episodes in a row. Woo!
I mean, I I figured they would because they would have to at least give us, the audience, some context as to, like, why they aren't being allowed on the base.
Exactly, yeah. I didn't really expect the way that it went, though, like, at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it was much different than I thought.
It was just very strange. It was just a strange meeting all together. But Maria's saying that, like, oh, I think I know this person. And I've seen a lot of really cool fan art since of, like, a young Maria and Caroline Cordovan, like, facing off. It's been really cool to see that. But
well, one thing they did say is that they were former colleagues. So I'm like, what does that mean? Like, was Cordovan a huntress?
No, wasn't that just, like, one of them guessing? Like, were you former colleagues?
Well, no, because Weiss said friends, or, oh wait, no, it was Ruby said friends, Weiss said acquaintances, then Blake said colleagues, and you could hear Maria say former, and then Yang says enemies.
No, she says warmer.
And she goes, that's...
Maria
does
said
she say...
warmer? Yeah, not former.
I heard former. That makes more sense. Because I was like, Cordovan does not seem like she would ever be a huntress.
No. Maria definitely said warmer, yeah. And then Yang says enemies, and she's like, that's the one.
That's the one, yep.
Yeah, so not former colleagues, just...
Warmer colleagues.
I liked Maria's explanation, though, of like, you bring outside cashews onto an Atlas flight once, and suddenly you're the devil. And it's like... I can just imagine how all of that would have played out, because Maria's such a sassy piece of shit. And she just, like, gives Caroline her own during this entire scene. Maria is a scene stealer. Every single time she speaks, she steals the spotlight from everybody else in the room. And it's great. I love it. Yeah. The amount of sass that she's giving Cordovan is great here. Because I really don't like that tiny she-devil at all. I don't know if we'll get to see her again, but I imagine
Cordovan?
I imagine she'll pop back in before they leave Argus.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I also like Maria's comment of like, hey, maybe we could get lucky. Maybe she's dead.
Maybe she's dead. Shouldn't you be dead, Maria? You're pretty old. She's probably not that old, actually. But I'm still hung up on the fact that Maria is so short now. I'm still hung up on it. I can't get over it. I know it's like anime tropes that people get really short when they're old, but it's like, that short though, she shrunk like 5 feet. Like, not even exaggerating.
Well, that was actually in the rewind. Jackie referred to Cordovan as like chibified Queen of Hearts or something like that. Like, he referred to her as chibified. Yeah. And I was like, well, actually, though.
Well, yeah, this is pretty accurate, really. She does have a big old head, so, yeah. Just, Caroline Cordovan is just such a typical, like, stereotypical what we think about, like, Atlas people.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's nice to, like, nice to see, because we've heard so much about how, like, militarized they are. And, like, also we've talked about before how they are, Atlas as a society is kind of, like, based on communism a little bit, and she definitely has the, like, ultra patriotism of a communist.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's all very, like, Atlas to me kind of borders on the edge of feeling like Nazi Germany at this point, because the embargo going on, and I just don't trust Ironwood at all whatsoever. It's not that I think he's not a good person. I think he is a good person. But I think he makes a lot of really bad decisions because he's panicking and doesn't know what to do. And I just wish that Cory was able to contact him in some form. Like, Cory sent that letter. It's got to get there at some point. So hopefully that will be their ticket into Atlas, is Ironwood receiving that letter. Because I don't see how else they're going to possibly convince them to let them across the border. It's just not going to happen.
Well, that's why I'm convinced that that's when Winter will be the reason, and that was why I didn't think Winter would be the leader of that base, is because I'm like, that'll be too easy if it's Winter, like, it'll be too easy. So there has to be like a middle ground, and then Winter shows up, and I don't know, something will happen, and like Cordovan will get embarrassed in front of Winter, and it'll be hilarious.
Now I wonder how short Maria and Caroline will be in Chibi. They'll be the same height as everyone else, and it'll be weird.
I know.
It'll be weird. I hope that Chibi starts to branch out into recent volumes. That would be nice. We've had 3 seasons of Beacon stuff now. I don't know what else they could possibly do with it, so hopefully Chibi starts to branch out into more volume 4 to 6 territory.
Yeah, no, seriously, show us the world.
I know, right? There are so many characters we want to see and we cannot because we're still in Beacon.
Yeah, Chibify the boat captain and
right?
do like weird boat skits.
Right?
Chibify Ilya.
Chibify the sea dragon, Grim. I want to see that. Yeah, so episode, yes. I can't remember, honestly, most of this conversation. And I've seen it like 3 times, and I can't remember most of it. I'm like, I don't even know what they talked about.
Well, let's see. I wrote down that Maria calls her Cordo.
Does she?
Which is, yeah, it's right after their, like, witch, she-devil comment.
Oh.
And she says, Cordo, something, 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 you've still got that stick right up your, and then Ruby jumps in. And, she talks about how she's already turned away the others, and then Nora and Ren are there, well, Team Junior's there, and Nora's like, I told you we wouldn't leave until... just, them being them. And then Cordovan goes into her spiel about how great Atlas is, and how the Argus people are ingrates.
Yeah. And
then Weiss and Ruby talk about how they were at the Battle of Beacon, and they know Atlas wasn't involved, and accidentally implied that General Ironwood was scared, which shut Carolyn down.
I mean, it's true, but
it is.
At the same time, probably not the best idea to bring it up.
Yeah.
In front of a loyal subject.
Mm-hmm. And then she made her comment about how to Mishni, if you truly want to return to your family, Atlas would be happy to take you, but won't take your friends because they are of questionable character.
Yeah, and looks directly at Blake.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody notices. Everybody. There's not a single person there that isn't like, are you racist or bad word? That I'm not going to say on the podcast. Yeah, and at that point I was like, oh, you nasty piece of work. Like, how dare you? You don't know what this girl's been through. You don't know nothing about her character. I'm like sassing her in my head the whole time, and I'm like, oh, you piece of shit. I really don't like you.
I know, and I just hate that the way that you just like physically see Blake like sink into herself and stuff, and it's just like, oh baby.
She has that natural knee-jerk reaction to like be ashamed and like just curl into herself and not stand up for herself, and I hate that. I'm like, oh man, the fucking humans. Like, no wonder the Faunus like rose up and started killing them all. Like, they got sick of being treated like this, and clearly like Atlas still has a lot of problems with not only with the Faunus, but with just everyone who isn't in Atlas, clearly. Yeah, racism and a half, if I've ever seen it. Exactly that.
But I just love that, like, immediately, Yang is standing behind her, ready to kill her, and Weiss is like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, Weiss is literally like, what is that supposed to mean? I love that Weiss stood up for Blake, too. Because, like, it's such a contrast to, like, way back when they first met, when Weiss was, like, arguing in her face about how much she hates the Faunus. And, like, but the fact that Weiss is now sticking up for Blake made me really, like, fuzzy on the inside. I'm like, yes, Weiss, you stick up for your friend. I love this. But the tone that she takes with Caroline, like, what does that mean? She's like, excuse me? What did you just imply? Because, Weiss, having come from Atlas and having been raised with that mentality, now she knows better. And it shows through here. And she's just like, don't you fucking dare talk about my friends like that. I will destroy you. Like, yeah, I like that.
It's like, okay, if you're talking about Yang, understandable. You're talking about Blake, we'll kill you.
Yeah, we will literally burn you alive. Don't even. Yeah, so that was, and then once Caroline actually leaves and Blake's ears are, like, back and she's just sort of, like, just standing there, not really, you know, wanting to just sort of curl up and die, like, just fade out of existence, and they're all, like, looking at her really sympathetically, but nobody really knows what to say.
I know. I was so disappointed there, especially then, because, like, also Weiss is having her own, like, internal thing about, oh god, you know, I don't want to go back to Atlas, and they know I'm here now, and oh god. And Ruby, like, comforts her, and I'm like, okay, good on you, Ruby. Why is nobody comforting Blake?
I know, right? She just got, like, bitch slapped with a racist glove real hard. Yeah, but, I mean, it's that uncomfortable moment of, like, nobody really knows what to say, so everybody just pretends it didn't happen.
Yeah. Because, I mean, of everyone there, Blake truly is the only one that gets it.
Yeah. But, yeah, Weiss being, like, she's starting to be, like, she's about to say, I don't want to go by myself. Like, you can see her start to say it, and, Ruby's like, no, we told you we're not going to leave you. Like, don't be ridiculous. You're not going back to Atlas by yourself. We'll find another way. Crow pissed me off in this scene once again. Crow is just... and then later when Ruby's, like, calling him and he's not answering, I'm like, Crow needs a good... Like, I just want Ruby to just walk up to him and fucking whack him one across the face and be like, what are you doing? Stop being you for 5 minutes. Is Blake looking at Yang, asking for a friend who totally doesn't make Ruby abridged? Yang did look at Blake when that happened, I think. And she looked like she was about ready to cut a bitch.
I don't really think Blake was just kind of, like, looking down. Like, she was just kind of, like...
She wasn't looking at anyone.
Yeah. Trust me, I'm a Bumblebee shipper. I'd have known. I actually really did not pay attention to Yang, like, at all this episode.
Well, she didn't really do much.
She really didn't do much this episode.
She had a few lines, but they weren't of any consequence, and she was just kind of there. So, and when you have a group this big, that does tend to happen, where every episode there's a person that's just kind of there. For once this episode, it wasn't Oscar.
I mean, it was Oscar for, like, the first half of the episode, and then the second half they gave...
into it later. What was I going to say? I've forgotten completely. Oh my gosh. The two guys, at the base, I love that Yang called them out, like, do you guys have to do that? Like, she's literally speaking the thoughts of everybody that's watching the episode at that moment. I was like, oh, thank you. Like, shut them up. They're so annoying. I can't stand it.
It's just so weird how just, like, this one interaction with, like, Atlas people is like, God, like, everybody makes so much sense now. Like, what, like, Weiss's things about, like, you know, standing out and, like, being her own person and stuff, like, suddenly just makes 7,000 times more sense after seeing these people. And, like, you know, even, like, Yang's own issues with, like, you know, wanting to stand out come to the forefront here as well, with she's just like, Jesus, you guys are just the same person.
I imagine Atlas to be like, you've played Mass Effect, haven't you? So you know the very first base you come across in Mass Effect, I think it's called the Citadel, or it's like really white and like sort of just very uniform, and everybody looks the same, and it's like it's just very... That's what I imagine Atlas to look like. Like, I imagine it to look like that Citadel.
Yeah, it's the it is the sci-fi section of this world.
Or I imagine it to look like Academia from Final Fantasy 13 too, as well. Which is a very similar kind of, like, everything's white, everybody wears the same clothes, everything's so uniform. I just imagine loads of, like, white constructed paths with maybe a few shrubs in the middle. And, like, just everybody walking around in the same Atlas uniform, and nobody really has any individuality, which would make sense because Atlas was on the opposite side of the Great War, the side that was fighting against individuality and art and expressionism and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, they were the ones that literally were like, okay, everybody, no more emotions. No more emotions, everybody.
Everybody just be the same, and like human nature, that's not going to happen. But yeah, suddenly Weiss does make a lot more sense. The more we interact with Atlas people, the more sense she starts to make.
I know, right?
Yeah, because we're like, man, Atlas people are pieces of shit. Holy crap, are they shitty people? And I'm actually...
Like, also, does it not make you think about, like, Ilya? Like, Ilya grew up in Atlas, too, and it's like, Jesus... I'm so sorry, Ilya. No wonder you became a terrorist.
Yeah, no, exactly. No wonder she went a little bit psycho there. Like, honestly, if Adam had been born in Atlas, he would make so much more sense to me. But Adam's he's another thing entirely.
He's just a psycho.
He's just a nutcase. But, what was I going to say? I don't remember now. I'm looking forward to getting to Atlas, but at the same time, I'm so apprehensive because I'm like, I have this very clear picture in my head of what it's going to be like. And if it is that concerns me. I'm like, I don't want it to be like what I picture, but it's probably going to be. I'm not looking forward to meeting all the people and the whole idea of Atlas is weeding me out at this point. And also, I'm not looking forward to going back to Ironwood because we know the first thing he's going to do is try and take over everything. And he's not the person to take over everything. Also, Ozpin's still AWOL, so we don't know what's going on there.
Yeah. I know, the thing I'm most worried about with the situation with Ironwood is that, like, they need Ironwood because they, need to lock away this relic. But, like, he is just going to look at that relic and just see power. Yeah. Like, he's really going to look at it and see knowledge, and he's going to be like, Like, that's why I'm almost like, please use up the last question before you leave. Please, thank you.
Yeah, I'm like, I just want the last question they use to be, how can Salem be destroyed? Word it properly this time. For fuck's sakes, because Ozpin did not word it right the first time. He said, how do I destroy Salem? And Jin's like, lol, bitch, you can't.
Yeah, I know.
But there must be a way. There has to be a way.
Yeah, I'm just like... I don't know, because the two people I was most holding on to hope for, and now there's really only one, is I was like, okay, either Oscar's going to figure it out or Maria's going to figure it out. Because everybody else is dumb.
Everybody else is dumb.
But
maybe
after
Ruby.
this...
Because she does actually bring it up in this episode. She's like, there's Jin, but we only have one question left. Like, she's been thinking about it, obviously.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking more like with the fact that, like, Ozpin asked maybe he didn't, maybe there is another person.
Yeah.
And
what
like,
they need to ask Jin is, how can Salem be stopped? Take the eye out of it. Take the destroyed out of it. There has to be a way to stop her, even if it's not destroying her. Because they probably can't destroy her altogether.
Ask how she can be stopped.
How can Salem be stopped? That's the question they need to ask. But yeah, RWBY doesn't want to use that last question, obviously, because they can't wait until next century, because it's probably not going to be a next century at this rate.
Well, I mean, at this point, they have, like... I mean, we don't actually get, like, an actual time frame before the questions reset. Or, like, when does the timer on the questions reset? Like, is it every actual 100 years that... So, like, we know that he locked it away 80 years ago, so, like, are we, like, a year off of getting more questions, or are we 20 years off getting more questions?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Or even then, like, did the century, like, change while it's been in the vault for 40 years? Like, and stuff like this where I'm like, I don't know.
Were the questions asked between then and now as well is another thing entirely. But it's been locked in the vault, so I would say probably not. But, yeah.
See you, Bartek.
So bye, Bartek. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, there's too many variables, too many questions that we don't have answers to. So
yeah, Pishin actually posted a theory that somebody else had made in the on your Discord, and I was like, and the question was the theory was that Lionheart asked the first question, and that was why he betrayed them. But I was just like,
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. It's the same reason why, like, I don't think Raven asked the first question either, because, like, granted, Lionheart has the key to opening the path to the vault.
Yeah.
So he is the more likely, but, like...
He can't get into the vault, though. That's the thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then they're saying, like, it would have had to been, like, 10 years ago while he still had, you know, the previous Spring Maiden, and that, like, maybe that's why she ran off, is because she learned all this stuff from Jin, and that's why she ran off, and that's why Raven, you know, killed her and stuff. But I'm just like, would Lionheart have known Jin's name? Because Crow didn't. And Crow was in the inner circle, so... I don't know.
Raven and the Spring Maiden still make no sense to me, because Raven claims that she doesn't want any part of this. I don't want to get involved. It's no. But then she kills the Spring Maiden, knowing full well that there's like a 95% possibility she's gonna receive her powers.
Mm-hmm.
Bitch, you dumb! Like, her motivations make no sense to me. I'm like, she says one thing and does something else, and I'm like, what? Like, she's either kidding herself, kidding everyone else, or both. And I'm like, I just don't understand why she would just straight up murder the Spring Maiden and be like, oops, got her powers now. Well, I still don't want anything to do with this, though. And it's like, oh my god, Raven, you're such a dumbass.
Yeah. Like, I think the explanation is supposed to be that Raven could better protect the powers from Salem. But even then, that doesn't make sense. Exactly, it makes no sense because she doesn't want anything to do with the war. But then she's, like, still protecting the maidens,
and then
if that is her motivation.
Why would she present Vanal as the Spring Maiden, then? To like, protect herself, but throw Vanal into the line of fire, you know? And, like, people came looking for Vanal. So she must have known that was going to happen eventually. And it's like, none of your actions make sense to me. None of them. Like, you have not thought this through. But, yeah, I mean, we've talked about that at length before, but it just keeps coming up because Raven just doesn't make any sense as a character. Her motivations are just so contradictory to what she's doing. And it's like, I don't think she really knows what the fuck she's doing. That's the thing. I think she has no idea what she's doing. I think, she has no idea what she wants, and she has no idea whose side she's on. So... that's her problem. She cannot decide on what to do because she cannot, she just can't let it go or doesn't want to let it go, or she's just so conflicted that she's just contradicting herself constantly. And it drives me up the wall. But, anywho, back to the episode at hand. Team Junior here is starting to talk about, like, oh, we should just ask Ozpin. He'll know what to do. And the rest of Team RWBY are like, oh, this is about to be really awkward.
Yeah.
We all knew this was coming. It was in the intro, for fuck's sakes. But it was super tense. This whole thing was so tense. And, like, Jean putting a dent in the wall. And, excuse me, Jean, that's your sister's wall. You better fix it.
Yeah, I know.
You better fix
Saffron's
that, boy.
Saffron's gonna tear his ear off.
What did you do to my wall?
Well, they joked about on the RWBY Rewind that Jean just put a poster over it.
Put up a... Oh my god, did you see the tangent, but did you see the fan art of, I think I shared it on the Discord, of the Pumpkin Pete cereal box? Where Saffron's like, funny. I have this old box of cereal, John, would you like it? And pours it out and it's Ash. I was like, how fucking dare you? I don't remember who the artist was now, but it's in my Discord.
I'm positive. Wasn't it Dishwasher?
It was, you're right, it was Bark, yeah.
I was like, it's gotta be.
It was Bark, yeah. Son of a bitch. That piece of shit. How dare he? But go check it out in the Discord if you want to see it. I'll put the linkies in the chat. Yeah. So, yeah, the scene was super tense, and, like, we knew it was coming, and we knew they'd have to tell them eventually, and they're understandably very angry. And Jean's like, everything we did was for nothing, and Blake's going, oh, that's not true, and even Nora's like, well, I mean, it sounds like it is, and she's right, pretty much. Everything they have done has basically been for nothing, because Ozpin has no plan, and no way to defeat the enemy that they've been fighting, and it's like, well... Kind of, yeah.
But like, I know this. The thing that still frustrates me about all of them is I'm just like, but is it for nothing? Like, Salem would have, like the White Fang would have destroyed Mistral basically. Like if they hadn't intervened there.
I mean, at this point though, they're right to feel like they're just delaying the inevitable because there's no end game. Like Ozpin doesn't have a plan.
Yeah.
So they're like, so we get all of the relics. Then what? And it's like, yeah, I'm on your side. Like, then what? What do they do then? Like, because if they can't kill Salem, and eventually she's just going to win by default. So they're like, so the fuck is the point in us just delaying the destruction of the universe? Get it over with already. But yeah, I mean, I really feel for Team Junior Hero as well because Team RWBY's had time for this to sink in. They've had time to like
it's been about 2 days.
It's been about a couple of days, yeah. So they've had time to like sort of just accept it. But this is all fresh for Team Junior, so of course they're fucking pissed off. And they're probably a little annoyed that Team RWBY didn't tell them straight away as well. But it just didn't really come up until now, is the thing. And it wasn't the most important thing at the time. Jean in this scene was worrying me a little bit. I understand where he's coming from, but everyone needs to stop beating the shit out of Oscar for something Ozpin did. And Jean's like response of like when Oscar's like, "Oh, we're not the bad guys here, you know, we just got to deal with this," and he's like, "Are we sure about that?" And like his immediate train of thought goes to like, "Did you know about this? Like, are you, like, whose side are you on?" Almost is what he's accusing Oscar of. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, like it was weird because he had almost contradictory thoughts where he was like he was angry at Oscar. Like, did you know about this? And then he kind of like shifted the blame to, is Oscar even here? Like, are you Ozpin? Like,
I mean, he's not thinking straight in that moment. He's just angry and he's just looking for somebody to point the finger at. But I'm like, everybody needs to stop just grabbing Oscar and shaking Oscar and punching Oscar. I'm like, it's not Oscar's fault. Just leave him alone. He's just a poor little farm boy. Stop touching him. And like, especially because Jean gets right up in his face and like grabs his shirt and he's like accusing him of all of this shit. And I loved Weiss actually when Jean was like striding over to Oscar and Weiss was like trying to get in between them. She's like, he didn't know any of it, like trying to sort of placate him, but at that point he's just on the warpath.
Yeah. You also just, I feel like you just see that in that like maybe just like in her like abuse kind of survival thing where like or playing like the mediator, like that is a thing that like children of abuse learn, is they learn to be the mediator. And you know, we know that Jacques hit her once. We don't know how frequent that was.
Oh, that's happened
like corporal
before.
Corporal punishment definitely seems like something the Schnee household did, because even Winter hit her. So
yeah,
like,
I mean, like even her sister beat her over the head a couple times, and it's like we saw Jacques slap her, but that cannot have been the only time. Especially, I feel like it would get less frequent the older she got. So that means when she was younger, it was worse. So like, the abuse, I think, as the children get older, shifts from physical to emotional and mental abuse more so. I mean, everything's always present, but there's definite shift as the child gets older. But that's a whole nother can of worms that we probably don't want to open up. But
I just noticed that, like, you know, she was trying to play the mediator and was like trying to diffuse the situation, because I feel like she knew, she was like, he's gonna hurt Oscar.
Oh yeah,
like,
he was.
She felt it was happening.
Yeah. He was taking no prisoners. He didn't care whose fault it was. He just wanted somebody to punch. And I understand where he's coming from, but everybody needs to leave Oscar the fuck alone. But I did like Weiss saying, like, he didn't know any of this, because that was my first question when we learned about all of this too, way back in chapter 2. I was like, did Oscar know this? Like, did he know anything about this? But it's become very increasingly clear that no, he had no idea. He was totally not privy to any of it. Once chapter 3 rolled around and his reaction to everything he was seeing, I was like, he didn't know any of this.
Well, that's the thing, though, is this episode Oscar did something that kind of made me question that, was that when right before when they asked, so what's the plan to deal with Salem before Jean went on this warpath, is he looked right at Ruby, and I don't know if he was like, was he looking at her for like guidance, or was he looking at her because like maybe she's the key? Like, is he figuring things out? Or
I think he is putting two and two together, but at the same time, I think he really looks to Ruby. He looks up to Ruby. And we've seen it a couple times before throughout the show, but I think he really looks up to her, and he's always looking to her for like, because she is the leader, so he's always turning to her and looking to her to see what she's doing. And of course, right now she's not feeling so great about any of it. None of them are, but she's probably holding it together the best out of anyone. Except for Oscar. Oscar's holding it together extremely well, considering he's the person who's been saddled with all of this. And he's also copping all of the blame for everything Oz has basically ever done. But I just, in the scene when John was like shaking Oscar, I was like internally getting so stressed. I was like, oh my god, just put him down! Leave him alone!
Shaken baby syndrome.
And then, like, everyone's screaming at him, and it's not until Ruby goes, John! And he's like, oh, well, alright, fine. But he doesn't really snap out of it. He just kind of lets him go, and he's like, you can see he's still angry, and he just storms off because it's easier than, but Oscar...
I don't know. I think he had a moment of kind of, like, shame in there, because, like, there was, like, a moment where his face softened.
There was a brief moment, but he's still pissed. I don't blame him for being pissed, but at the same time, there's some better ways to handle it. But again, I feel like people forget about the fact that Jean is probably thinking about Pyrrha right now, and he already knew what she died for, but now he knows that she literally died for nothing. And he's like, she died because she was trying to become a maiden to help Oz with all of this, and that was all for nothing. And that's probably all that's going through his mind right now, is Pyrrha died for nothing. Because he cared about her more than anything. So, that's probably where his mind frame is at. And I wouldn't be surprised if he mentions it at some stage. But...
Miles did make a comment on this rewind relating to Jean, and something about him, like, not dealing with things properly.
No.
So, which makes me think that... like, ooh, wait, are we finally gonna, like, bring up Pyrrha again?
I feel like it has to happen. Like, it's just like, that must be all Jean is thinking about right now, is Pyrrha. And, when he, like, walks away here, I was looking at Oscar the second time I watched it, and Oscar's, like, got his hands up, and he's, like, shrunk back against the wall. And then when Jean, like, turns to go up the stairs, Oscar shrinks back even further. Like, he's terrified. And I'm like, oh... my poor baby. Like, everyone needs to stop traumatizing him. It's not his fault, leave him alone. And, like, it's just... I feel so bad for him. And I don't blame him for running away at the end of the episode. We know it was going to happen. So, it was just a matter of time. It was just a matter of something pushing him over the edge. It's stupid and it's not a good idea, but it was inevitable. He is going to get himself into trouble, definitely.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about that later. But when Yang's like, is he going to be okay? And Nora is like, I don't know, and storms off herself. And then even Ren is like angry. And we don't see Ren show any kind of emotion ever, usually. So to see him like, we need some time to ourselves. He's like, what was that?
I'm trying to open a bottle and it squeaked. I was like, ugh.
That sounded like a kazoo.
It did.
That was such a weird noise. You saw the Stay Healthy bot say hydrate, and you were like, water time.
Yeah, I was like,
oh my gosh, it's so hot. I have to turn on my fan in a sec. But, even Ren, to see Ren, like, his brows are so furrowed, and he's like, we need some time alone, and he's, like, so pissed off. I'm like, okay, don't mess with Ren when he's feeling any sort of anything, because we've seen how it goes when he actually gets pissed off. So they all storm off upstairs, and then Blake's like, maybe we could all use some space, so,
I was kind of concerned about Blake in this scene because, like, immediately after what we just went through, and the entire time she's just like sitting on the couch, and I'm just like, Blake, are you okay?
She's fine. I'm sure she's sadly used to it.
I mean, I also just straight up didn't like her implication of maybe we should all be alone. I was like, bitches, don't leave Oscar alone. Comfort him. Hold him.
God, seriously.
He needs a bottle.
I know, right? He needs a blanket. He needs a shock blanket, like now. And a warm fire. Fucking, oh my god, poor Oscar. But, yeah, I feel the worst for him out of anyone. Because he's just copying everything, and he's like, this isn't my fault, leave me alone, I'm just a little boy. And he's handling it all extraordinarily well, considering. But, yeah, so Ruby's, like, going outside and trying to call Crow, and he's not answering his phone. This was another awkward animation moment for me. When she throws the phone, her arms just kind of like, ugh. But she doesn't look like she throws it with any gusto, but it goes halfway across the garden, and I'm like,
yeah,
that looked really weird. Like, they still haven't quite got throwing things quite right with the animation there. But Ruby's like, everybody else went to go get food, and she, this scene with Maria was really interesting. I really liked them finally getting to have a moment alone to sort of discuss things away from everybody else. Maria is the eternal sass queen. Like, I came out here to get away from the yelling. Like, she just can't be bothered with all the teenagers and their angsty shit. And Ruby's like, Maria's like, well, why didn't you go with them? And she's like, I don't know anything. And she's like, you can clearly see Ruby's like having a hard time with like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what we should do. I don't know what's the right thing to do. And it goes back to Yang being like, Ruby always knows the right thing to do, but at the moment she's like, I don't fucking know what to do. So I have no idea.
Yeah, she literally says, I don't know anything, and I feel like I'm letting everyone down. And it's like, oh, Ruby. I just love Ruby this volume so much. It's like, yes, Ruby's finally, like, feeling things.
No, she's getting some character development. It's good. We live for it. Keep going. But, yeah, she's just... I really feel for her, because she, being the leader... she's always taken the responsibility of everything on herself, and she's taking all of this as her responsibility, even though it's really not. But it's in her nature to sort of take all of this responsibility on, and it's a lot of the reason why she's such a good leader. But I get why she's like feeling like she's like, I'm letting everyone down, and like Maria sort of backing her up here by saying, you don't give yourself enough credit. And Ruby's response was weird. She's like, huh, thanks. And then Maria's like, it wasn't a compliment, bitch. Like, it's not a good thing. Don't mistake my tone. But I just, like, Maria's just such, like, the perfect teacher for Ruby. Because she's kind of similar to Crow in that, like, she's this massive sass master, and she's, you know, old and she doesn't really give a shit anymore, so she's got nothing to lose. The best kind of character is a character that's got nothing to lose, because they just don't give a shit. She doesn't care about anything. And she's like, but now she's kind of, I feel like Maria's someone who's been drifting for a very, very long time, and now she's sort of found her purpose in RWBY. And she's like, well, now I can read Cory.
I'm sorry, Larissa is live.
Okay, jeez. And now she sort of like sees this, okay, here's this young silver-eyed warrior, and she wants me to teach her to do what I did, and that's something that I can do. And like suddenly she has a purpose, probably for the first time in the last 30 years. So it's really nice to see Maria and RWBY interacting, because I see a lot of RWBY in Maria. So I'm like, Maria's totally what RWBY could grow up to be in 50 years' time. It's like a look ahead at what RWBY could end up being like.
Mm-hmm.
They have, I think, a very similar nature in that desire to protect others and to serve the people of Remnant. And the only thing that bothered me about the scene was Maria's semblance, and we talked about this a little bit off the podcast.
Yeah.
It's a weird one, because it's like, you mentioned that you thought Aura already provided what Maria's semblance seems to provide, which is like heightened senses and that kind of thing.
Yeah, because the explanation we got back in Volume 1 was like, Pyrrha said, do you ever feel like somebody is watching you without knowing someone's there? And we've also, in the instances we saw of Maria using her thing, was like blocking bullets and stuff like that. And it's like we already
do that.
Yeah, it's like we've already seen other people block bullets and stuff, and like, you know, maybe the explanation is just that Maria's got that, but like turned up 2 notches or something. But it does seem like a bit of a cop out where it's like they kind of already implied that like they already get those things. So why?
Yeah, but like after she said like, oh, I can react to attacks almost before they happen, I went back and watched the fight and I was like, I don't see it. Like, if that was the case, surely she would have been able to avoid losing her eyes in that fight. But
well, you hear, because there's a specific sound effect that goes off when this happens. That I know, because you hear it, and when I heard it in this episode, I remembered hearing it during the Maria fight, and the times I think you only hear it twice during that fight is when Talk first attacks, and then I think right before she loses her eyes.
Right.
I think those, but there is a sound effect associated with when Maria learns this stuff. So
interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, I know. I think it's a dumb semblance.
Yeah, I was like, I don't see it at all. Going back and watching that fight. But like you were saying that like you thought Aura already provided heightened senses, but I think of Aura as more of like a spiritual thing. So that thing of like feeling like you're being watched without someone knowing that, without knowing someone's there. That's not a core sense. It's a heightened sense. That's the thing. I think Aura amplifies heightened senses, like a spiritual senses and connection with the spiritual world, and then like that feeling of like you feel like you're being watched. That's like, it doesn't come from sight or hearing or sense of touch. It comes from a sense of something else, something heightened, like. It's kind of difficult to like put into words, but I feel Aura is the kind of thing that amplifies those kinds of senses, that like more deeply connects people with a spiritual sense. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, like the other thing that I also compared Maria's semblance to is like the Force, like, you know. And it already, like, I already kind of feel like there are some parallels between, like, the Force and Aura, because, like, you know, they're both, like, invisible magical forces, and, like, I don't know, like, I just always kind of, when I heard it was reflexes, I was just a little bit like, I don't know. I feel like it's just there to make her, like, you know, a Jedi Master.
Yeah. And they are really like pushing the Jedi thing with Maria, definitely. But yeah, I don't know. Her semblance just seemed a little pointless to me. Like, it didn't seem to have any effect on anything whatsoever.
Because, like, also, I mean, it just as we see with like other trained fighters is basically other trained fighters can teach themselves to have that sense, because like they learn body language on how to deflect shots and stuff, and so like they can learn to have a heightened sense of like, you know, when an attack's gonna happen, because they can like watch people. Like, So that's why it came across as such like a weird thing for her to have. Is it's like, well, this is kind of something that they can like train, but like you can't like train to have Ruby's speed or Weiss's glyphs and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's not really a superpower so much as it is just like, oh well, I can do this thing that everyone else can do, but a little bit better. But I still don't see it, and I'm like, But yeah, this conversation between them was nice, though. I did like the sort of way that Maria was, starting to like teach Ruby, and that she's got a kind of a tough love sort of thing going on, and I like that. I feel like Ruby needs some of that in her life.
I mean, she literally whacked her over the head with her with death at one point.
Whacked her over the head with death. There's a quote. But yeah, I really like this scene. I honestly don't remember most of what was said. Again, like the first half of the episode, I don't really remember most of what they talked about.
Yeah. One question I did want to ask you is this your least favorite episode of the volume so far? Because I'm still going back and forth with this one in episode 4.
No, I think 4 is still...
Yeah, because at least this... Yeah, because at least this episode had, like, the Silver Eye talk, whereas episode 4 just kind of had nothing.
Episode 4 was Fallout, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
This was kind of... Not so much
Fallout.
Not so much Fallout as it was, like, they've hit a brick wall and they can't really go further.
Yeah, I guess it was, like, this weird combination of, like rising tension, but also Fallout.
Yeah, it was rising tension and hitting a dead end, as well as more Fallout from Chapter 3. And it was weird. It was a weird combination of things. But, like, the first half of the episode was so bizarre to me. But then we got the scene with Team Junior and then the talk with Maria, and that sort of, like, redeemed the first half of the episode. And that first section went on for too long. But it needs to be a couple minutes shorter. But the fact that this episode was still, like, 17 minutes, whereas Chapter 4 was, like, 13. Yeah, no, this is still a better episode than Chapter 4.
Yeah. And again, that's not saying that this episode is bad. Because, this episode is bad as an episode, but, like, in the grand scheme of, like, RWBY Volume 6, it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's fine. I was, when I first saw it, I was more concerned about, like, is this going to be boring the second time I watch it? But it wasn't. And it wasn't the third time either. So,
yeah.
But that was...
Whereas I did feel that way about episode 4, though. I did find it boring on, like, the second and third watch.
I would agree with that. And also, like, that was the trap that Volume 5, Chapter 8, and Volume 4, Chapter 8, and Volume 5, Chapter 9 fell into, is that on second viewing, they were boring. Even Volume 5, Chapter 9 on first viewing was boring. So, like, that talk went on for far too long. So it got to a point where I was like, I'm bored with this, can we move on? But this episode on first, second, and third viewing didn't really have that. So, it was still interesting to watch and interesting to listen to. I feel like a lot of that has to do with Maria just makes any scene she's in so interesting and so dynamic and so, like, full of character, because she is just a tiny bundle of character. She has the most character of many of the characters we've met in the entire show.
Yeah.
She's fully fleshed out as a person and as a personality. And I just love her. She's so sassy and she just steals the limelight from absolutely everyone. I never thought that Weiss could ever be in a scene and somebody else could be stealing the spotlight while she's in that scene, because I adore Weiss, and every scene that she's in, I'm like, she's usually the first one I'm looking at to gauge what she's doing and how she's feeling, because she's the one I care about the most, and to be perfectly honest. But Maria...
I mean, same.
Maria just steals the scene from everybody, including Weiss. So, like, every time Maria's in a scene, I'm like, so what's Maria doing? But she's not in every scene, that's the thing. So, she's in it a lot less than the others are. But yeah, Weiss is my favorite and my baby. And honestly, like, I look to Weiss first to gauge how she's feeling because I'm constantly worried about her because they keep putting her through so much shit. I'm like, stop traumatizing my snow angel. I need to make sure she's okay before I look at anybody else in this scene right now. Yeah, so... yeah, this talk was a nice... I feel like the episode was a definite change of pace. Because it's been very quick up until now, and now it's like, bang! We've stopped dead completely. We've hit a brick wall, and we can't go any further than this right now.
Yeah.
So it's like...
Also, after this episode, though, I am like, okay, we're staying in Argus the rest of the volume. I have no doubts about that at this point. Especially with having one less episode.
I don't know. I still think there's time, but we do have one less chapter, that's the thing. And I don't know exactly why they made that decision, but as far as I'm aware, it's creatively where they felt like they needed to take the volume. I think maybe they didn't want to fall into the same trap that they did last volume, where chapter 14 was just super rushed and really disappointing. So I'm glad they have made this decision to knock off a chapter. But at the same time, I wonder if they might not try to incorporate some of that into Chapter 13, and maybe Chapter 13 will be a bit longer, and...
maybe instead of having a 3-part finale, like, they were playing, like, episodes 12, 13, and 14, and they're like, actually, we could probably make this just 12 and 13, make them a bit longer, and it'll be fine.
I don't think this finale is going to be as big as Volume 5's, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There's no attack on Haven going on, so... The finale is going to definitely not be a massive confrontation, but something is going to go on. And I feel like the fact that they have locked off a chapter kind of tells us that the finale isn't going to be a huge, big event. It's just going to be maybe like a slow burn of something. I feel like this volume's going to end on a cliffhanger. In a bad way. I don't know. Gonna happen. I don't like it.
I mean, I think something's like. Honestly, I'm kind of convinced that Maria dies this volume.
Oh, I don't think so.
I don't know. Like, Maria kind of has a lot of like things about her that are worrisome because she is, like, she is the like mentor, and
I know, but we just met her.
I know, but like she also just. I don't know, after her comment last episode about how she was scared, so she just stopped fighting, and I wish I'd left the world in better, like the world you guys are going to inherit in better condition, and blah blah blah. I'm just like convinced that, like, when Cinder shows up, she's gonna be like, "You guys go, I've got this bitch."
Righto. Somehow I don't think that's gonna be the case.
I don't think, but like, I'm convinced that like she will maybe sacrifice herself, because
I don't think it'll happen this volume. I
maybe not.
think she's going to end up going to Atlas with them.
She did make that comment this episode about how she goes to Atlas to like get her eyes checked. So maybe Atlas was all. She was on the Argus limit.
So maybe it's time to go get a checkup, Maria.
Yeah.
But yeah, I honestly, going into this volume and seeing the intro for the first time, I was like, Crow's dead. This will be the volume we lose Crow. But now I'm like, chapter 8, there's only 13, there's, I can't count, 5 chapters left.
5 chapters.
I'm like, is there time to kill Crow? But at the same time, I'm like, we have gone through this before where we're like, they don't have time to wrap this up, and they absolutely have managed it. So
yeah, you and me talking about the end of Volume 3. How are they going to do this? Holy shit, they're doing too much. What the fuck?
Exactly. What the fuck was that?
Someone just slid a letter under my door. I hear you laughing.
That's great. No, I remember when, like, Volume 3 was happening, and, like, right around the time I started reacting to the show, when, like, the Fall of Beacon started to happen at the end of Chapter 9, and we were like, how are they going to drag this out over 3 chapters? And then it got to Chapter 10, and we were like, how are they going to wrap this up in 2 chapters? It's not going to happen. But, and again, the same thing with Volume 5, like, they got to the Haven attack at the end of Chapter 10, and it's like... How are they going to drag this out over fucking 4 chapters, but they did it.
Oh boy, did they.
Oh boy, did they drag it out. Holy crap. Yeah, chapter 14 definitely didn't need to be there, but they could have consolidated and squeezed it into 3 instead of 4, but we got chapter 13, so that was amazing, but I'm not gonna complain about that, but yeah, I mean, 5 chapters, they can do a lot in 5 chapters.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would have been fine with, like, my biggest issue with Volume 5, or at least Volume 5, Chapter 14, was that I was like, it ended weird. Like, I was just like, I would be fine if you did 14 episodes if this wasn't the last episode. Like, if you had condensed all of this into other stuff and then, like, had, like, a wrap-up episode or something. Like,
I mean,
it just ended so suddenly that it left a really bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we'll talk about next week, but,
True.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. As far as... Yeah?
I was gonna say, do you need me to take over about what happened in the end scene?
I honestly don't really... I know that, like, Yang's like, oh, Ruby, come here, and, Blake says it's Oscar he's missing, and it's like, they all look at each other like, oh my god, like, where could he have gone? I'm like, bitches, how did you not see this coming? Come on, girls. Like, seriously. You guys have done nothing but abuse him ever since chapter 3, and it's like, of course he fucking took off. He's like, he must be feeling just the worst right now. He must be feeling guilty and scared and stressed and just everything all at once. And so it's no surprise that he took off. It's a dumb thing to do, but I'm not surprised. And he's definitely going to get himself in trouble. I was wondering quietly to myself if maybe he's going to run into Cinder or Neo somewhere in August.
I don't know, because once again, Cinder and Neo are 3 weeks behind Team RWBY.
7 weeks behind.
No. Is it?
When we initially met Cinder at the start of this volume, her story was 6 weeks behind everyone else's. No. Yeah, 6 weeks behind.
No, she was only a month behind.
No, because it had been a month. The poster said, seen at Haven Academy approximately 1 month ago, but Team RWBY were 2 weeks ahead of that. So it was 6 weeks.
No, they were 2 weeks behind that. They left 2 weeks after the Battle of Haven.
Exactly.
And they're saying they haven't seen Cinder since 4 weeks ago at the Battle of Haven.
I'm thinking about it the wrong way round, aren't I?
Yeah, I'm like, nope, you're going the wrong way.
So they're a couple weeks behind.
Yeah, so they're 3 weeks behind, because then it took
3 weeks behind.
Then it took Little Miss a week for them.
Them, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
they're 3 weeks behind. Yeah. So the the Oscar would have to be missing for like 3 weeks for that to happen, and I'm just like, ooh.
Yeah, but what I'm thinking is, are they gonna time jump Cinder and Neo's section of the story by and catch them up by just bringing them to Argus now? Because if that was 3 weeks ago when they were like, okay, let's work together to find RWBY, that's technically 3 weeks ago from what we're seeing now. There's more than enough time for them to get to Argus. Like, they would need a couple days.
No, it's 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks in the future from what we've seen. It's only RWBY's story's only gone on for like 2 days.
Yeah, but they're still 3 weeks in the future.
But Cinder and Neo are 3 weeks in the future.
No, they're 3 weeks behind, aren't they?
No.
I'm so confused.
Because Team RWBY left 2 weeks after the fall of Beacon, and Cinder met with Little Miss 2 weeks after, or 2 weeks after they left, 4 weeks after the fall of.
I'm so confused. This is too confusing. I cannot work this out in my head for some reason. I can't figure out who's behind and who's in front. I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
RWBY is 3 weeks ahead of. They are 3 weeks ahead of Cinder and Neo. Yeah, RWBY has a 3 week head start over Cinder and Neo. So Oscar would have to be missing for 3 weeks in order for Cinder and Neo to catch up.
No, I'm still confused. I can't work it out. Honestly, why don't they just have everyone on the same fucking fucking time frame, so it's not
I
so
know.
goddamn confusing. But,
It
like,
is.
what I'm thinking is, like, because I know Blake's storyline last volume was behind everybody else's. So I'm like, are they going to do a time jump thing where they just catch them up by, like, bringing them to Argus? But I'm confused now about who's in front and who's behind. I don't know.
But the reason they were able to do that time jump is because they were just time jumping travel, is what it was.
That's
but
what I'm
the
saying.
thing
They're
is
going to
that
do the same thing here.
But Blake was also behind all of them.
Right, so who's behind? Cinder or Team RWBY? I don't know. I'm confused.
Team RWBY is further in the past than Cinder. Cinder and Neo. Yes. Because at the point in the story they're at, Cinder is in front.
Okay.
But they're still in Haven in front.
Right, so everything that's happening for Team RWBY technically happened 3 weeks ago for them.
Yes.
I'm still confused. But, you know... I wish they would, like, spell it out for us, because it's just too confusing. And they try they try to spell it out in the background, but I'm so confused. I'm like, I don't know who's in front and who's behind. I don't know what's going on. So by this point in time in Cinder's story, they've probably reached Atlas already.
Oh, by the point in Cinder's story? Oh, yeah, they've well, I don't know if they've reached Atlas, because I think they're going to catch up.
3 weeks? They should have reached it by then.
I mean, maybe. I guess it depends on if they're going to, like, make Cinder... Because I'm still under the impression that Cinder is going to catch up to them in Argus, but maybe not. Maybe Cinder won't catch them until they're in Atlas.
3 weeks is a long time, yeah.
True, yeah. Yeah. Especially at the pace that RWBY's going right now. It's been 2 days.
Yeah, like, literally, it's been a couple days, and we're here already, so... yeah, I don't know. I was quietly wondering that to myself, but that's because I thought Cinder was behind, not in front, and now I'm just confused. So, yeah. I don't know. But he's definitely going to get himself into some form of trouble.
I'm just wondering, like, what is his plan? Like, I even said in my reaction, I'm like, what is Oscar doing? Like,
he's going for a drink. That's what he's doing.
I was like, is he going
he's gonna go find Crow.
Kill himself? Or,
no,
like, what is his plan? Like, that's way too dark for RWBY.
No. I feel like he just needs some time away from everything and everyone else, because all they're doing is giving him shit that he doesn't deserve.
He's gonna go down to the movie theater and watch The Fall of Beacon.
Wow. Talk about dark. You know, he's gonna
that was one of the movies playing at the theater.
Oh, yeah. That was a movie playing at the theater?
Yeah, I wrote it down.
Serious?
Yeah,
the other ones were... They would make a movie about a real-life event, like, a month after it actually happened. Well, not a month. A year after it happened.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been like a year. People were making jokes about, like, oh, Mercury's a director now. Yeah, the movies were Tryst in the Mist, which was about romance in Mistral, The Fall of Beacon, and Demon of the Deep. Oh, and Genlock. There was a Genlock poster on there as well.
I saw the Genlock one. As if they'd make a movie about a real-life event that happened, like, a year ago. That just wouldn't happen. And in a year, it certainly wouldn't happen. That's really weird. But,
I mean, unless it's just a documentary. They could put that together in a year.
A documentary of the Fall of Beacon. The thing is, though, like, how could they document that? Nobody knew it was going to happen. They didn't have any warning. So,
well, I mean, but, like, you don't think that they have, like, you know, I don't know, some kind of VCR?
Oh, they would have footage of it, sure.
Like they just collect all the footage. Because, like, that's the other thing, is part of Cinder's plan was, like, basically live streaming the Fall of Beacon to the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's Cinder. She's got to be extra. Yeah, Oscar's definitely going to get himself into some kind of trouble. I'm still holding out hope that he's going to get himself into trouble and Osborn's going to have to come back to kind of rescue him and stop him from...
Well, that's kind of why I was like, wait, is he going off to, like, kill himself? Like, is he pulling... Well, I was like, is he pulling a, like... Oh, God, I'm going to make this reference again. Is he pulling a Bella from New Moon, and he's like, I'm going to make you come back by doing dangerous things, Ozpin. How does that make you feel, Ozpin?
I don't think so. I think he's just trying to escape the situation that he's in, especially because John actually really kind of terrified him. So,
sure.
Yeah, I think he's just looking for somewhere to be that is... He can just be alone. Which is not a good idea, Oscar.
He's gonna go to a coffee shop and he's gonna run into Sun Wukong.
Now that would be something. Sun once again following Blake around. I miss Sun. So sad. Yeah, I don't. As far as predictions for next week are concerned,
well, the other things that I wanted to talk about this episode is that Maria talked about a license exam to become a huntress.
Right.
Which I was like, I guess that they're, graduating Beacon isn't, or graduating a Huntsman Academy prepares you for this exam, I guess. And that would explain how people like Tweedledee and Tweedledum were able to become huntsmen, because they could probably, just like train in one specific area to pass the exam. And they were just maybe like really good at shooting stuff, and that was it.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, it's like anything. Like going to college for something doesn't guarantee you a job when you leave. So it's like it makes sense that they have this sort of license exam for huntsmen to gain their license. And not anybody can just go out and slay Grimm. It's probably just not really allowed because it's not safe. But it makes sense that they have this whole licensing thing.
Yeah.
And we saw Crow. Oh, sorry, I'm stretching. We saw Crow show his credentials to Tweedledum and Tweedledee at the start of the volume. He's like, a professional huntsman. Oh, look at me. So, yeah, it makes sense that they would have something like that. And Maria is like a Blake situation where Blake passed the exam to get into Beacon, even though she didn't go to a combat school because she was raised in a menagerie with the White Fangs. So she already knew all of the skills that she needed to pass that exam. So Maria's like same kind of deal. She didn't go to a Huntsman Academy, which doesn't surprise me.
I mean, also, like, as she talks about, like, she was born probably like just after the Great War, because she talks about how the combat academies were a thing. So that means that, like, Maria is at least 60. I mean, 60s, go figure. Easily, yeah. Go figure. Yeah. So, but that she didn't attend one, and that all she knew is her dad was a soldier and stuff. So,
I wonder, her father must have had silver eyes, right?
She said that
him teaching her. Yeah. She never says outright that he had silver eyes, but she says, "I had my father to teach me." So I'm like, he definitely had silver eyes. So that's like our first mention of a male character having silver eyes. So that's good to know. But that puts an end to that.
We talked about that last time.
We did, yeah.
Another thing they brought up is that Maria said that the three things she could do with her eyes is she could turn Grimm to stone, or she could blind them, or she could vaporize them. And I'm like, well, Ruby's done all three at this point. Yeah. Because she turned the Wyvern to stone.
Well, she mentioned that in this episode, which is interesting, because before they just referred to it as being frozen. And last week, I know we were discussing the silver eye power is elemental, but now we know she turned it to stone. That's what actually happened. So,
and then we know Ruby probably that when she did the thing that saved Blake from the apathy, that was blinding. That she blinded the apathy and then vaporized what she did to the apathy after that. So it's kind of like, but why is it different? How is it different? It must be an
emotional thing, surely. It must be because.
Well, but they had that conversation where, like, she said, think of the times that you've used your powers, and she said, I was stressed and scared. Is it emotional? And Maria goes, kind of, but like it's about protection. So she says it's not really about emotion; it's about protection and preserving life.
That being said, when Ruby first used her silver eyes and turned the Wyvern to stone, and whatever she did to Cinder, she had just watched Pyrrha die in front of her. So that wasn't a protection thing. Pyrrha was dead. So that was like grief and extreme sorrow and shock is what was going on there. That wasn't a protection thing. So,
it could have maybe been a protection thing. Like, Weiss is right downstairs. The people of Remnant, or
I doubt she was
the people of Vale, or
moment, though.
True.
I doubt she could have thought about anything else.
I mean, like, maybe it just came down to, like, I need to stop her. Because, like, even in a way, that is thoughts preservation.
It could have been anger
is I need to
well,
stop her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anger is shock, disbelief, sorrow, extreme sadness, yeah. And just, I mean, I've never witnessed one of my friends die in front of me, so I can't really explain how it feels, because I don't know how it feels, but, I can imagine how it feels. But, yeah, that doesn't seem to me to have been a protection thing, and then every time since then, she has used it to try and protect someone, and it's been different than how it was the first time. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she used it to try and protect Jean, to try and protect Blake, and everyone else around her. And it wasn't until Maria, like, tried to focus her into it that she was actually able to destroy Grimm with it. She'd never destroyed Grimm with it before. So, it wasn't until Maria was like, hone in on this feeling and use that to channel it into your power. And it was the first time she actually vaporized the Grimm with it. So, yeah.
I guess it probably then just depends on, like, maybe how strong the sense of preservation is.
Yeah.
Sort of. Because, like, even if you think about, like, Maria during the young Maria fight, she turned it to stone. She didn't vaporize it. So, like, she was really only trying to protect herself there, kind of. And, like, it was probably a little bit more of an emotional thing where she kind of, like, panicked and, like, shit, this thing's still alive. I need to stay alive so I can protect more people. And that's only why it turned to stone and didn't vaporize it, because, like, she wasn't, like, actively trying to save anybody, maybe.
Again, too, it is a big Grimm, and so was the Wyvern, so that could have something to do with it. Like, it could be that, like, vaporizing a large Grimm like that probably takes a lot more than it would to vaporize a bunch of apathy, say. And that's probably why she was only able to turn it to stone. And it's probably the same reason why Ruby was only able to turn the Wyvern to stone. Because of the sheer scale of the Grimm itself. Yeah. As for the blinding thing, I don't know.
Yeah. And then there's just also... Yeah, like, even now with that description, it brings up, like, and they talk about this later in the episode, is that Cinder was affected by the thing. But she only talked about Cinder being affected at the fall of Haven. And it's like, well, we know she had the Grimm arm then, like... So it's like, but what happened to her at the top of that tower during Beacon?
To be fair, Cinder's aura was down at the time, at the top of the tower. And,
but, like,
this
Grimm, episode 2...
Okay, the Grimm glove thing doesn't make sense because it's the wrong arm.
Yeah.
So... I don't know why people keep coming back with that. That doesn't make sense. It's the wrong arm. She wore the glove on her right arm. She lost the left. So, some people have, like, theorized that, like, the bow that she was holding in her left arm could have had something to do with why she lost her left arm. But I'm like, again, doesn't make sense. Her left arm was outstretched towards Ruby, so it was closer. But, I'm like...
I saw... Somebody's explanation was that it was kind of implied that the God of Darkness gave them the gift of magic in episode 3, and that because Cinder was a maiden, that would make her. But then that still goes back to the discussion we had all the time during the end of Volume 5, is why wasn't Raven affected then?
Exactly.
If it's a maiden thing, wouldn't Raven have been affected? So
exactly, yeah.
So it is kind of.
We know that it doesn't work on people. At the very least, we know that it doesn't work on people who have an aura that is active. It could be an aura thing. So if Ruby tried to use the Silver Eyes on somebody whose aura was down, I feel like it would probably damage them to some degree.
Well, I don't know, because also the explanation we got was that it's, the light to stop the darkness. This episode, she can, Marie even says she can only use it in the presence of Grimm. Like, she can only use it in the presence of darkness.
Well, then that doesn't...
So...
Well, that makes sense for the top of the tower because there was a Grimm there. So...
Yeah. But, I don't know. I'm just wondering... Like, the thing I'm now wondering is, honestly, I want to see Cinder's back, because when the Grimm bug went into her arm, the tattoo appeared on her back.
Appeared on her back, yeah.
So it's like maybe the Grimm was like just inside her then, and who knows, maybe it was just chilling in her other arm that day.
I have no idea. But it's all very...
Yeah.
I feel like when they did all of this, they didn't have it worked out completely yet.
Yeah, because that was the conclusion we came to last time, is we were like, they just didn't have the rules for Silver Eyes down yet.
I feel like it's not adding up for that reason, because they hadn't made it add up yet. And they're trying to now, and it's not really working, because they've changed the rules. But, like, I feel like there's a lot of circumstances that could be explained away, like there was a Grim Wyvern present on top of the tower, and Cinder's aura was down. That's why she was affected by the Silver Eyes. And then when we get to Haven Academy, Cinder's aura was up, but her Grim arm isn't protected by aura, and that's why it was affected. And the reason Ruby was able to use her Silver Eyes is because there was Grim in the room, technically. And then the apathy is self-explanatory. But the only times we've seen her use her Silver Eyes on a person is Cinder, but there has been Grim present both times. So... but in Haven Academy, Cinder's aura was up. So, I mean, there's just so many, like, variables to it. And I don't know if we're ever really gonna get an explanation for it.
Yeah. Because, like, especially just the way they went about talking about this episode is they were talking... Like, it was clear they were talking about her Grim arm, and it's like... like, that doesn't help with us with the initial use, like everybody already figured out that was the case. Like, but it's like, but what happened before that?
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
It is frustrating. Yeah, and again, like, Cinder used that Grim Glove device to steal the Maiden's power. The other Maiden, that is
Amber.
But yeah, I mean, it's still the wrong arm, so I'm still like, that still doesn't make any sense. So I'm just gonna go with her aura was down, and that's why she was affected.
Plus, also the other thing is even if it was, the glove only went up to like her forearm, whereas like she lost her arm like up past the elbow.
Oh no, the glove went over the elbow. I'm pretty sure.
Did it?
Yeah. It's still the wrong arm, so I don't know why we're debating it. It's still the wrong arm. It doesn't matter, because it's not the right arm. Well, it is the right arm, it's not the left arm. But, you know, it's still, we're still debating something that is still, it's wrong anyway, no matter which way you look at it. But, yeah, so, I don't know. I'm just going to go with Cinder's aura was down, she was affected for that reason. Let's just go with that.
She's a nasty piece of shit, so she is darkness. So it worked because of that.
I mean, yeah.
She's evil incarnate, so she's basically a Grim.
Anywho, predictions for next chapter.
I'm honestly, I'm very annoyed. I'm so annoyed that this turned out to be the mid-season break, because I'm like, God damn it, my Adam theory is gone, and I was so confident in it.
I mean,
I even said that at the start of my reaction to episode 8, is I was like, I'm very confident in this theory that Adam's going to show up at the end of next episode. It's going to be the mid-season cliffhanger. LOL.
I mean, before we thought that chapter 9 was going to be the mid-season cliffhanger. So I still think something is going to happen at the end of chapter 9. I don't think this is going to change just because they moved the week. But, yeah, I think something's going to happen at the end, and it's going to have something to do with Oscar getting kidnapped or some shit. Adam, I still don't know if we're going to see him next chapter. I doubt it. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like we need to see Salem, because we haven't caught up with them for a little while.
I don't know. Like, you and I said that, like, all throughout Volume 5 as well, and Salem just... I don't know. I don't know I don't know what would be relevant enough to show us her right now. Like, she has kind of...
about Tyrion. He's supposed to be heading towards Argus right now, so... We're forgetting about him.
He's headed towards Atlas.
Right.
Like, Hazel had the knowledge that... Team Ruby was headed to Argus, but he was still at that point. I mean, I guess. Mm,
Because doesn't
I
he
don't know.
like?
I guess
Doesn't he
they
say
never
that
really.
they're on their way to Atlas and they're being led by Ozpin? And before that, Tyrion's like, "Oh, not if I can help it." So,
But we don't know if she's actually going to send Tyrion. Although, granted, I think she will.
I think she will. I think Tyrion's got a lot of redeeming himself to do. So I wonder if we might see Tyrion show up in Argus.
I don't know. I think that if we're not going to see, if like Neo and Cinder aren't going to show up in Argus this volume, I think then, because there has to be some sort of conflict at the end of this volume, and maybe in like we've been talking about how it has to, like Adam has to show up at some point to justify the existence of the Adam character short. So maybe he'll show up soon, and that like that'll be the end season cliffhanger. Like
so far, not looking great for the Adam character short. Chapter 8, no Adam.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
well, you forget we saw him for a whole minute.
The tantrum doesn't count. It wasn't even a minute.
It wasn't even.
It was like 50-something seconds, I'm pretty sure. But, yeah, I don't know. Oh my god. Just, the character short threw such a spanner in the works for this volume because it was supposed to set the tone for the volume, but what it did is it showed us something and then we get to the volume and we're like, so what was going on there? Like, it has nothing to do with the volume.
Also, I say the quality of the Adam character short. It really like had me worried for this volume,
and
then
really low for the volume, and then chapter 1 came along and like ratcheted it up to here, and we're like, okay, and the volume's only gotten better as it's gone along, except maybe for this week, but it's sort of gone back to that. Well, I mean, at the point that they're at in the story, where can they really take it from there? Except for, like, something has to happen now to shift them onto the next sort of, like, story arc for the rest of the volume. Which is probably going to be Oscar getting kidnapped.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say Oscar's getting kidnapped next chapter. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
He's going to run into some fucking trouble. And, that's going to be it for him. He's up shit creek without a paddle now. So, literally, Ozpin was his paddle. His paddle's gone.
His paddle is gone.
His paddle is gone.
One other thing I forgot to bring up about this episode is we got confirmation that silver-eyed warriors get their power because of the God of Light.
Right.
And I kind of hate that.
I kind of hate it too. I wish they had left it a little more ambiguous, but Maria is obviously a very switched-on person, and she's like, were you paying attention to the vision that Jin showed us? But again, she's making an assumption. She doesn't actually know that. But... yeah,
but
I mean, they're basically spelling it out for us, and it's like...
It is basically spelling it out for us.
Half of us didn't need you to spell it out, so could you not? They're spelling it out for all the people that didn't work that out for themselves. And I'm like, but the people that did work that out for themselves are now just irritated by the fact that you spelled it out. So...
yeah. I just hate that, like, I don't want every
tiny thing explained. Yeah.
Well, not just every tiny thing, but I just don't want everything to be like a gift from the gods.
Oh yeah. Fuck
I'm
the
like,
gods.
it's like I get that it's still kind of magical and stuff, but like why couldn't like silver-eyed warriors have been a thing that was like just like a weird phenomenon like the Faunus that appeared out of the remnants of the previous world? Like why did they have to explain it away in that the God of Light gave? I mean, it's a gift from the God of Light potentially. Like, people are already thinking that it's from Oz's kids, but, like, I don't know.
I don't know that there's so much saying that, like, the God of Light physically made silver-eyed people for this purpose. I feel like it could be, like, a Faunus thing. Like, it's a phenomenon of leftover magic from the God of Light. And it's just, like, something that's just naturally carried over. I don't think he physically went, well, I'm going to leave these silver-eyed people here, so hopefully they can fix the world. But,
yeah, sure.
I don't think he would have... I don't know. Where the gods are concerned, they just confuse me.
Yeah. I do still kind of hate the introduction of the gods into RWBY. Like,
it
I mean,
just at some point.
Yeah, I know. Like, I mean, it's kind of it helps because especially like Salem and Oz's story is so intertwined with the gods that you like needed that story to be told. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, but like let the gods just have been a thing, and now they're not.
Yeah,
And
exactly,
that's
exactly. But I'm
like
of the mind that the Silver-Eyed Warriors are a remnant of sort of like the God of Light's magic. Because I mean, humans had to reform from somewhere because they destroyed the world. So the next generation of humans had to come from somewhere. And the faunus showed up as well out of the blue. So I feel like
maybe
everything is a remnant left over from the magic that once existed.
Yeah.
So
they'll explain it away like Assassin's Creed did with like the sages and precursor DNA.
yeah.
I hope not. That's Assassin's Creed is way too complicated. Please, God, no.
Oh my god, Assassin's Creed doesn't even understand its own fucking lore.
True.
And it's just inconsistent across everything. So, but yeah, I mean, RWBY's the kind of show where they're still figuring it out as they go along. So they did not have everything worked out before they started Volume 1. It's very obvious now. So, I mean, they had the main big things worked out, but it's the small details with like how did the Silver Eyes work and like where did the faunus come from and like all of this kind of stuff that they probably didn't really have worked out. And they've had to go, shit, now we have to explain this. Let's work it in like this. Does that work? Sure. And it's like they have to throw sort of explanations in for things just in between everything. And of course, they've lost their main source of lore, which was Monty. So he probably knew what he was wanting to do with things. And but I doubt he had everything worked out, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Nobody usually does when they start a story. Nobody has everything worked out. Things tend to either work themselves out over time, or you have to work them in somewhere. So yeah. Anyway, we should probably wrap this shit up because it's almost 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, I know the last thing that I did kind of want to talk about before we wrapped up, and I did want to do it at the end, is like talking about kind of the fallout of Chapter 7 with like our reaction videos going up and just like the just homophobia that was in the fandom.
Don't even get me started. Holy crap, I could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, I know. I just kind of wanted to say that, like, I know, to people watching that, like, I don't know, if those comments bothered you, because I know they bothered us, but I know we are a place where it's okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just... It bothers me that people went out of their way to say stuff like that, and
yeah, it really bothers me. It makes me angry, actually, like really angry. Like it's nearly 2019. Come the fuck on with that shit. Like seriously, get with the times, and like it makes me angry as an LGBT person, and like the fact that people feel like they need to go out of their way to like leave a comment on my reaction video telling me how much they hated the fact that an LGBT couple was put in there. I'm like, it doesn't even bother me to that effect. It's the fact that when I come back at them and say, well, I'm an LGBT person, I appreciate the representation, and then they come back at me and tell me that I am wrong or evil for being who I am. That's what pisses me off. Fuck the fuck off with that. Like, seriously. If there's anybody on my channel that is going to come at me and say LGBT people are evil or they're sinful or they're wrong, fuck off. Unsubscribe, because I don't want to hear about it and I don't want to see you in my comments. Like, I'm deadly serious. And like, that's how much it pisses me off, because at the end of the day, we are all people, and no two people think the same. And like,
but your opinion being that other people aren't people isn't
exactly
an opinion that isn't an opinion that like can be ignored.
Yeah.
Like, it can be tolerated.
And like, that's the thing, people who are not LGBT or people who are religious have been coming at me constantly during the week and being like, oh, well, you know, like, my beliefs aren't represented in the show. Somebody on Twitter was actually arguing with me, trying to compare their Christian beliefs to me being an LGBT person. And I'm like, it's not the same thing. Your beliefs are your beliefs because that's your religion and that's what you believe in. Being LGBT is not a belief, okay? Like, that's not the same thing. It's not a religion. Cory's getting distracted right now. So I'm going to point it out because he's trying to not make a big deal out of it, and I'm going to make a big deal out of it.
Yeah. It's coming in to bother me about dinner. We are doing this an hour later than usual, so it's dinner time.
But like, your religious beliefs are not the same as being an LGBT person. That isn't, it's not a belief. It's not what I believe, it's what I am. So, and there's nothing I can't change that about myself. I can't suddenly stop being who I am. And it's just the way that I am. And
but that's the thing, though, is people like that have the belief that it's not, like, even if it's like, okay, you were born that way, but you can choose not to act on it.
No, that's
like, you can choose to not be sinful.
I find that people who are religious or Christian specifically, and I can say this because I was married to one, and I know what they're like, and like, they have this mentality that we choose to be the way that we are. We don't. Let me make that very clear. I did not choose to be bisexual. It happened. It's like, it's just the way that I am, and it's taken me a long time to accept that that's the way that I am, but it's the way that I am, and there's nothing that I could have possibly done to change it. There's nothing that influenced me to be that way. It's just that's just me. And like, I think that most LGBT people are in the exact same boat. Maybe there are some that like, they weren't sure for a long time, they chose to go one way or another, and there are some that still haven't made up their minds, and all of that is valid. And but I feel like most LGBT people are in the boat where they just know that this is the way that they are, and there's nothing they can do to change it, and they shouldn't be expected to do anything to change it. But your religious beliefs are something that you believe because it's either what you want to believe, what you were raised to believe, or just, you know, it's not the same thing. It's like, being LGBT is a biological thing. It's a chemical thing, it's a biological thing, it's tangible, it's real, it's physical. And a religion is just not a biological or a chemical thing. It's just not the same thing. You cannot compare the two. You just can't. It's not the same thing. So, but like, the fact that person was coming at me on Twitter and like constantly coming back at me and trying to convince me that my sexual orientation was the same as their religion, and their argument was like, I'm not being represented in this show because there's no Christians in it. I'm like, bitch, it's not the same fucking thing. And
there is no Christianity in RWBY.
There is no Christianity in RWBY because it's a fictional world. But like,
they even talked about how they didn't really want to have a religion in there.
Of course,
like,
it was
there's clearly religion,
but
yeah, I mean, there's clearly stuff in the show that is like representative of religions, but it's like, we're never going to get explanations really about what those religions are.
No,
because it's just not something the show wants to do.
No. And it's like, it's not something that should be focused on. And again, LGBT is not something that should be focused on. It's something that should just be there. And it was. That's how they handled it. It was just there.
And like, literally, going back to Miles's comment that I said earlier, is that they make shows that they make because of it's shows they want to watch.
Exactly.
Like, they make shows based on ideas of things they would watch. And I mean, at the end of the day, Rooster Teeth is a very liberal company, and there aren't very many religious people within the company, and of course that's not going to be represented in their show because that's just not who they are, and not every show has to represent everybody. Like,
yeah, and that's
there are plenty of shows out there about, you know, religious families and all kinds of stuff. Like, those are shows you can watch if you need to be represented. And Rooster Teeth is choosing to represent LGBT people because LGBT people work on the show, are in the fandom, are in everyday life, and just for people to like bitch about the fact that literally the third and fourth LGBT characters were introduced to the show, when like there's a statistic that like around 10% of people in the world are LGBT, and the show's had hundreds of characters, and this is the 4th confirmed one.
Yeah.
It's just, it's stupid.
And only the 2nd and 3rd one we've met at any length as well. So,
yeah, exactly.
Like, just stop. It's the 21st century, for Christ's sake. Like,
yeah, and I even hated people who were making comments that were like I saw on other people's reaction videos, like, oh, thank God, a person who isn't like super obsessed with the fact that, you know, she has a wife, or that about LGBT representation. And it's like, why can't you let people be excited about being represented in the show? Like I saw so many reactions from people, especially like women who are LGBT, who like there was one I watched who she even burst into tears when she saw that, because she was so happy that she was being represented in RWBY. Yeah. And like how can you take that away from somebody? Like, let somebody enjoy the show in the way they want to enjoy it.
Yeah, and then somebody else was coming at me on Twitter and being like, but there's so much LGBT representation in media. No, there's not. If you look around at all of media, there is a laughably small amount of LGBT representation. It's actually comical how little there is. And it's like, these people are like coming at me and telling me that it's wrong or it's against their beliefs. Whatever. If it's against your beliefs, stop watching and fuck off. Like, if it's against your beliefs and you feel that strongly about it, you don't have to watch the show, and you certainly don't have to come onto my reaction to it just to tell me how wrong it is. Especially when I am one of those people. And it's so insulting to me, and it's so insulting to people I know. And I'm not the only RWBY reactor that's LGBT. I'm not going to name names, but there are a lot of us.
They're everywhere, yeah.
So, like...
I mean, just, like, also just the thing that I've learned from just, like, interacting with the fandom is it's, like, there is a very, very, very large portion of RWBY's fandom that is LGBT. Like, especially, like, women who are interested in women. Because it's a show about 4 girls. Like, of course, it would draw that audience. So, like... Even though I know they say they don't like pander to audiences or anything, but like, that audience is still there. And I mean, it's the 6th volume, and this is the 4th character. Like, calm down. Yeah. They've been doing this for 6 years. Like, I don't know.
I love that the only people too that are complaining about it at all are people who are not LGBT, or people who are religious and not LGBT. And they are the ones who are constantly being overly represented in media. And we're the ones who are being underrepresented. And the one time we do get represented and get excited about it is when all of those cis, straight, white, religious fuckers come at us and be like, ugh, representation. Oh, we don't want that for you guys. We only want that for us. Piss off. Seriously. Yeah. And it's like, it drives me to distraction, it drives me to anger, because it's like, I just can't understand that mentality at all. Like, why would you hate somebody just for being who they are when it literally doesn't affect you? And if it bothers you that much, don't watch the show, get off my reaction videos. Simple as that.
I know. I will say, though, I feel like a lot of... I mean, I'm not going to say everybody, because there are clearly people who believe that, but I do believe there was a subsection of the people commenting on this episode were purely there to troll, were purely there to get a rise out of people, and it was, you know, maybe not even people who actually hold these beliefs, but just people who are assholes who want to make people angry and stuff like that.
And those people suck.
Yeah.
And if you're one of those people, you can get fucked too.
Get help. Stop it. Get some help.
Listen, it's fine if you don't like LGBT people, if you don't like the representation, fine, whatever. But don't come at us hating at us for it. That is just
because it's not something. Move on. Exactly. At the end of the day, just move on.
Just move on. You literally don't have
ruin
to say
it for
anything.
Else?
Why would you bother going onto people's reaction videos? And it's not just mine; it's everybody's. And like, why would you bother going to that extreme of making sure that you want everyone else to know how wrong you think this is? Let me tell you, your way of thinking is medieval, and the world is changing, and this is what LGBT isn't a new thing. Here's the thing: we have always existed. It's just that now things are more leaning towards LGBT people are feeling more comfortable with being who they are and being accepted by society. This is not a new thing, and it's never going to go away, no matter how much you hate it. So, deal. We have to deal with seeing straight cis people represented all the time. We never make a fuss about it. We don't see a straight couple in a show and be like, ugh, they're not LGBT, gross. Like, you don't see us doing that. So why are you doing it?
Yeah. I saw a great comment that a person was like, okay, you got your one LGBT couple, here you go. And somebody was like, well, I mean, we don't say that about like the one straight couple. Like, oh, you met your straight couple quota.
The sad thing is it's so true, though. Like, here's your one LGBT couple, here you go. But Rooster Teeth just aren't that company. I know that this isn't going to be the only time. And that makes me excited for the future of the show. And again, the way they presented it, it was so normal. It was just there. And like... That was the other thing that annoyed me, was some of the people who were making the comments about like, oh, thank God somebody who's not making a big deal about this reveal, is like, we're also saying people who would be like, this is how it should be handled as not a big deal. But because people like you and me, who would make a big deal of, oh my God, an LGBT character, they were like, why are you making it such a big deal? It wasn't a big deal. It's because we're excited about it, because it never happens.
Yeah, because it never happens. Like,
it never happens.
It's like, we want them to introduce it in the show as if it's no big deal, but that doesn't mean that because they act like it's no big deal, doesn't mean we can't make a big deal out of it.
That doesn't mean we can't be excited and happy about it just because the show isn't making a big deal out of it. That's how we want it to be presented. And like, Saffron and Tara are the best kind of representation for an LGBT couple. They are just so normal. And like, and it was so normal to everyone else that they were a thing that existed, and they were just a normal family, and everybody was just being cool about it, and that's how we want it to be represented. Doesn't mean I'm not going to scream and carry on when it happens. So you just better deal with it, because that's going to happen every single time as the LGBT representation in the show, because it is just so rare in media. And everybody deserves to be represented, no matter who or what they are. And I feel like the only reason this is a big deal is because of how LGBT is still not widely seen as normal. And like, especially like, I feel like homosexuality is probably the most widely now accepted form of LGBT, but there's so many colors to this spectrum, it's not funny. And some of them I didn't even know about until very recently, and it's like...
You were literally talking about this the other day. Yesterday, I think.
Yeah.
Talking about different identities.
And it's such a colorful spectrum, and there's so many facets to it. And like, a lot of people just don't understand it. Please go and educate yourself about it. Do Google searches, educate yourself, because that is the only way we are going to overcome all this kind of horrible ignorance, is by making sure that everybody is on the same level and everybody's educated about LGBT and everybody understands what it is and what it means to be one of these people. Because it's hard. More often than not. So yeah. But anyway, on that note...
I know. Well, I just wanted to say that, like, at the end of the day, my point was that we are creating a safe space. We are a community where you can be as excited about these things as you want to be, and we will not tolerate people putting you down for that.
I absolutely have...
We are here to make your experience for RWBY as the best it possibly can.
Yeah. Everyone is welcome here. Nobody is welcome to discriminate against anybody else. It's just not going to happen. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear about it. If anybody is discriminating against anyone else on my channel for any reason, I will come the fuck at you. And I'm not only going to come the fuck at you with anger and with rudeness and swearing, I'm also going to come at you with the cold hard facts. And it's like, sometimes these people just can't be educated, and they just clearly don't want to hear the cold hard facts.
Yeah. And those are the people you just have to disengage from.
Yeah, that's when
if this person has... Because those are also usually the people where it's like, they act like they want to be educated, but then really their point is they want to educate you, and they have no intention of actually listening to you.
And they have no intention of seeing things as they are. They only see them as they want to see them. And it's those kinds of people that I just end up just deleting their channel, deleting their comment and blocking them. Because I'm like, I don't need that kind of negativity on my channel. I don't need it in my life. And like, I don't need it upsetting me to the point of me feeling like my feelings are invalid because of this fuckhead on my comments. So, yeah, that's our 2 cents about that.
It's our 20 minutes about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could go on forever about this.
So. I know it was something that really bothered you, and it happened the day after our last Boopcast. So I did want to like bring it up because it's something that is relevant to our experience in the RWBY fandom right now. So,
like, I will say that like Chapter 7 reaction is the reason comments are getting turned off on my channel, pretty much. Like, I've had enough. I've had enough of sifting through comments and all I see is negativity every single week. But last week it pushed me over the edge. And I was like, I've had enough. By the time the next Boopcast goes up, there will not be comments allowed on any of my videos. Because I just don't have time for it, I don't have room for it, and I don't want to be bothered by it. So, I'm sorry if you're somebody who likes to engage in conversation in the comments, but it's just not going to be an option anymore.
Discord is a great place. We have lots of insightful conversations on Discord.
Be in the description if you want to continue the conversation outside of the YouTube videos. You are absolutely welcome to go to my Discord. There are plenty of chats for us to continue the conversation outside of the YouTube videos. So if you have something to say about one of my videos, you can absolutely go there and say it. Just know that if you go there to troll or if you go there to discriminate, you will just get kicked off. So don't even bother.
Yeah, it's also because 90% of the time, if you want to like put Beck down, her mods are gonna take you out before she even sees it.
They will just destroy you. But
I'll fight you.
We'll all fight you.
Exactly.
Anyway, on that note, thank you for watching.
We should stop.
We should stop. We will see you next week. There will be a Boopcast next week. During the off week, we're going to discuss Volume 5, Chapter 14, as we mentioned. And then the following week, we'll have the Chapter 9 Boopcast. I don't know what's going on with guests, though, so we'll have to wait and see. But thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you then. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.